when the music starts.
Brown 45! Brown 45! Hot, 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 hot!
You are listening to Any Given Sunday, Australia.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Any Given Sunday Australia podcast, the number one podcast in 3 households, 1 studio, and the Gridiron Australia headquarters. Joining us, as always, down in his basement in the unknown place we don't bring up anymore, Mr. TC24 himself, at Tim Cardi, AGSAU. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good, mate. It's a little carrot. People can go back and listen to the early episode that they want to find out.
That's it. Content, it's all back there. You will find out where he is. Our junior boy turned senior boy, at Danny Webb, AGSAU. How are you, mate?
Good as always, mate. Just always happy to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. And joining us is a man who knows a thing or two about fitness. He's the senior coach for Athletes Authority. He's also Gridiron Australia's Combine Athlete Tester and the co-host of the Athlete Authority podcast, Mr. Jordi Taylor. How are you, mate?
No, what an intro. The music to the boys, it's unreal. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. One of those shirts look pretty good, the old Any Given Sunday, so feel free to flick those through and I'll throw up in the background.
Absolutely, mate. When we will see you down in Melbourne, I'm presuming.
Yeah, no, Melbourne, you won't catch me. We actually have an event for a couple of days, so that is the only one that I'm actually missing out on. You will see Adzi, who's our head of sports science here. He's also jumping on board with us to do the GA stuff. So he's an extra small. He's actually a sports scientist. So if you've got an extra small floating around, look at Adzi's way.
We've got a small. He can wear it as a jumper if he needs to. But shout out to Adzi. I know he is a big fan of the podcast, so we'll shout out to him. I'm presuming
Adzi's a great man.
He is. We look forward to meeting Adzi, and he will flick you a shirt, so don't stress.
Unreal. But no, guys, thanks for having me. The intro's unreal, and looking forward to chatting.
Absolutely, mate. I know you are also a big fan of the podcast, so the boys hate me doing this, but I like to do it just to get a bit of a mindset into who you are before we get to chat, and a bit of an icebreaker. Just 3 people that you would have, dead, alive, any time in history that you would have at a dinner party.
So I didn't know whether they're going to be dead or alive. So I'm just going to presume everyone's alive at this dinner table.
Yeah, as of this point in time.
Better conversation anyway. So I've gone 3 as requested. Mav Carter. I don't know you guys know Mav Carter is. He's LeBron James's businessman. So he's essentially the business behind LeBron. There's a book called LeBron Inc. Written by, I forget his name, but the guy that does all the tweets, breaks all the announcements in NBA, Wojnarowski or however you say his name.
Yeah, Wojnarowski.
Thank you, that's it. Cracking book, but yeah, Mav Carter, he's a bit of the guy that sort of lurks in the shadows, but does all the deals in the background. So I find him very interesting. So that'd be guest number 1. Guest number 2 would be, even though I'm probably not going to say anything because he'd be talking the whole time, would be Gary V. Just, again, absolute genius. The way that he operates is on another planet. So just to be around him, I think the osmosis would probably kick in after a while. And then the 3rd would be my girlfriend, Mia, because if I didn't invite her, I wouldn't have a place to come home to.
Very smart, man.
Yeah.
It's probably been the smartest response we've had.
Yeah. We had a lot of mums and dads, but the girlfriend's a good one.
Yeah, well thought out. Mum and dad will always look after me. She may not.
Yeah. She chooses to be with you where your mum and dad don't really have a choice. So.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
that'd be the 3.
Yeah, no, I like that. Gary V's a good one too. Just like you said, you'd be sitting there in awe just listening to all the stories that he does have.
I did toss it up because, as I said, I don't know how much he'd actually get to talk because it'd probably be him the whole time, but it'd be interesting nonetheless.
Absolutely. So Athletes Authority is, like we said, the company that's going to be doing all the testing at every combine throughout Australia, which we're going to touch on about that. But what is Athletes Authority and how did you get involved?
Yeah, so in short, Athletes Authority is a performance, facility, center, whatever you want to call it, dedicated to athletes. So an athlete is on our record, anyone who plays sport. So that could be 11 years old all the way through to professional. There could be Division 3 along the way, but really anyone that wants to be better at their sport. So whether you want to go from Div 3 to Div 2, A grade or shoot shield to professional rugby union, whatever it may be, that sort of, quote unquote falls in our what is an athlete, because that's usually one of the biggest questions we get is what defines an athlete. And before I arrived, I knew that the boys sort of went through around, oh, everyone's an athlete. Probably not the case. I had a crack at running yesterday, and I'll tell you right now, I'm no longer an athlete at all. So there is a small criteria, although it is small and I guess somewhat basic. It does really set up the standard that we want to achieve when we're dealing with the athletes that are in the facility. And the best way to think of how it is all run is essentially like a college facility. You have a coach on the floor, an assistant coach, a physio as well, which is a bit unique, I guess, in Australia especially. And then everyone's running through their own program in a group setting. So while, Tim, you may have a different program to me, we're still in the same environment. We're still going to push each other, and there may be crossover because if you look at any sporting program, there's going to be more crossovers than differences. But then at the end, we may do something a little bit different. But let's say we're both squatting together, we're having a red hot crack and trying to push some PBs, coach each other, all those sorts of things. That's a very broad overview around the facility side. To the left of that is also Athletes Authority Education, which hosts, I guess, a few things that sit under that. We have a couple of mentorships in regards to business from Carl, who's one of the co-founders, or he actually is the founder, I should say, co-owner. He does his business mentorship. We have an ACL mentorship with one of our head of rehabs that looks after that. Lockie, who is the other co-owner, who has an extensive background in pro sport through GWS Giants, Parramatta Eels. He's currently at the New South Wales Swifts in the netball. He has a mentorship there called the Performance Department, which is more around the coaching side of things. And then we host a wide variety of courses, et cetera, that sort of sit under that as well, including a Cert 3 and 4 in fitness. So there's a bit going on, but hopefully that was a bit of a short, sharp, straight to the point clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do people actually get involved in this?
Yeah, so to be fair, we are very lucky in regards to that we have a very strong word of mouth referral. I think if any business has that, they're always going to be doing pretty good. So word of mouth referral has always been a really strong selling point for us. Second to that, we are quite, I guess, prevalent on social media through a variety of channels. So athletes do often find us through that, whether someone shared that to them or they've been following for a long period of time. So we do have a little bit of thought that goes into our marketing, both organic and paid, which also is a pretty, strong referral network again for us to gain new athletes. We also have an affiliation with several local clubs. So the athletes typically, unfortunately, will come through that more so in the rehab side. They've been hurt in a game and, they may be in for a short-term rehab, which we call 3 months, or up to a long-term rehab being up to a year. So, yeah, there are a few of the channels, and I'm sure there's multiple other ways that they will find us as well.
And let's go a little bit deeper. What is the sort of training and stuff that you do offer?
Yeah, so the best way I think of it is athlete development. So that's built on training principles. Everyone here that works here, whether they're a coach or a physio, has tertiary education, so they've been through university, typically done sports science. Most people, except for myself, have done a master's, whether that be in S&C or high performance sport or masters of physiotherapy. So there is that, I guess, standard level of knowledge and educational background that all of our staff have. And then second to that, there's obviously also organisations, governing bodies, which we're affiliated to, the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, known as ASCA. The physio obviously have their own association as well, which I'm not prevalent to, so I won't speak to. But all these sort of organisations that we sort of sit under. So that's I guess, a base level of education and knowledge that you get, number one. And then on top of that, we have our training principles that we follow, and our own systems that we've developed over time. When I say we, not me, really. Lockie is the real driver of that we implement with the athletes that we have to make it, most importantly, an enjoyable environment. But obviously, second to that, we obviously want athletes to get good results. And so that's where it's targeted to achieving those results based on where the athlete currently is and what they want to achieve in their sport. And the cool thing about it is most of the athletes know it's not a short-term fix. So it's not like a 12-week challenge or anything like that. It is something that is going to take some time. And that's something that we like to let athletes know from the onset is athlete development doesn't happen overnight. If it did, we'd all be athletes. We'd all be in the NFL, NBA, wherever it is. But we're not, unfortunately. We're here. So we make sure athletes initially will do a 12-month commitment, because that's what we want to see from them. If they give us 12 months, we know that in 12 months we can, quite comfortably achieve the goals that they need to achieve, both physically, mentally, and whatever else it may be as well.
Which sounds like an incredible opportunity for so many people as well.
Danny Boy. I was going to say, quick shout out. Our good mate Maxi came in and did some. Do you guys? Would you sort of? I'm not sure what you class it, but maybe some like preliminary testing. He's come in and he's been at your gym in Melbourne. He did some testing with you guys. I think it was a bit earlier this year. So
really good point actually. So when an athlete reaches out to us, we run through what we call our game plan or our performance testing. So essentially, an athlete will come through. We'll go through a variety of testing batteries. And I'll sort of run through them just nice and basic. But essentially, we use our Vol Performance kit, being a real driver of that, which we'll probably touch on later, because they're obviously helping us out with the combine as well. But we'll essentially see how an athlete moves. Is there any crazy imbalances or anything we need to be aware of? And that's with what we call our human track, which is a 3D motion capture technology. It sounds very fancy, but it's quite basic really, because essentially it just gives us some nice shapes and angles that an athlete or a parent could understand, versus us trying to use technical jargon that will probably go over people's heads. So it's a really good visual starting point. From there, we take them onto the force decks, which are force plates, which essentially will measure a couple of things on there. One, their maximal strength through an isometric mid-thigh pull, their ability to produce force in the lower body, both muscular and tendon-based. So that'd be a squat jump and a counter movement jump. Then we go and do some more jump testing, broad jump, hops, and things like that to assess their horizontal force capabilities. And then some more specialized isolated sort of tests, such as a Nord board for eccentric hamstring strength, groin bar for hip add and abduction, and then a bit of a fitness or aerobic test on the bike at the end to finish it off. So it is quite comprehensive, but what that gives us is a really good picture around where an athlete, I guess, is their starting point. Any areas of opportunity that they may be aware of or also may not be aware of. We call those obviously like blind spots. And then also we can really identify their strengths and double down on those as well, because I think quite often a lot of coaches will look at an athlete and go, okay, well, they really need to work on this, this, and this. So that's where they hang their hat on that, versus, well, they're bloody good at this, this, and this. So let's double down on that, but also work on their weaknesses along as we sort of go. So bit of an overview on that one. And then, as I mentioned before, shout out to Adsy again. He collates all that. We've got, he'd be able to tell you, but a lot of data points now too, where let's say, Danny, you're a netballer, for example.
Yep,
we can put...
He's a gun attack.
Actually, I was goal attack. I've got a mixed netball. Yeah, proud of that one.
You get a little bit more movement in the court there too. Yeah. But we can compare you to netballers, male, and how old are you, Danny?
28.
Geez, you're in good nick, mate. So probably 25 plus would be the way we look at it. And so we can compare you to athletes that are similar, whether that be age, sport, position, and start to identify what we call like norms or normative data, which is where the average person in that sport, in that position, at that age would sit. And then we can compare you. So that takes obviously a lot of data points to do that. And as I said, Adsy's a freak and is be able to create and map all that out. And then at the end of that, you get a report, and it essentially will tell you where you sit and then go through everything we sort of mentioned there.
It's awesome. It's so comprehensive. I remember him saying, like he was in there doing the testing for a while, and then I need to follow up with him about his report and see what the results were that he got. But I think he was just going and doing that early level sort of preliminary stuff for him, like with his footy and just his sort of gym training that he does. But yeah, as we've mentioned, like you guys are getting involved with the high school combines coming up with dates the 3rd, 14th of July. Had to get that out. So what's going to be your role for you guys there at each of those dates on the combine?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm doing all of them bar the Melbourne one, so unreal. But essentially, trying to coordinate all the bodies and all the people that are going to be helping us. And on that point there as well, if there is anyone that's listening that would like to be a part of it, please feel free to reach out to AA or myself or anyone. You guys can probably drop in the show notes that would like to come and help out, because more hands are better. I think the biggest thing that we don't know yet, and I think Wade spoke about this the other day, is we just don't know the numbers. So that will really determine on how each day's run, which is, I guess, exciting and also daunting at the same time. 300 versus 30. things like that. But yeah, essentially my role is to look after how the days run at each particular state, make sure that all the testing is run well to a standard. And then the athletes just have a bloody good time. I think we did the Sydney one last year when it was essentially just the Jesse Williams camps.
Mhm.
And it was a really, really good day. We got all the conditions thrown at us. It was boiling hot, then pissing down rain, and then boiling hot, and then pissing down rain again. So that was a really good one to be thrown in the deep end. And I think we had about 120 athletes to that one. So that was probably a really good learning point for Adzi and I, as well as the rest of the crew that went down there. But yeah, essentially that. So we'll do all the front end of the way that the tests are A, conducted, B, recorded, and then I guess C, the delivery of the reports as well. And then, yeah, I guess the goal is to really have a solid standard. So when athletes come to these camps, they know that they're going to get looked after, number one. The testing data is actually applicable. And then third, they can actually walk away, maybe not straight away, but when they get their report, with some tangible information around, okay, this is what I'm really good at. This is something I need to improve on. This is how I can do that. So that's our goal from that standpoint. And we really do want to be a part of this from the ground up. And that's why we've thrown our hand up to really jump in on this, to really set the standard that I know Wade and GA want. And they're doing a fantastic job, and they just need some extra hands to make it happen. So hopefully we can do that this year and into the future as well.
Yeah, we were speaking to Russell Hewitt the other day, and he was saying that the testing is actually going to be comparable to the same ways if you're going into the NFL draft as well, which I think for all these young athletes, especially the aspiring ones that want to make it to the States, huge information for them to have personally to be able to, compare themselves to future stars.
Mate, 100%. And I think the best way to look at it is, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've got probably two schools of thought on this. And I've labelled it a bit of a hybrid NFL combine testing. And the reason I've called it hybrid is, the NFL Combine, the reason exactly what you mentioned just there, Danny, is that it's historic data. So whether you were testing back in the 80s to now, you can compare yourself to athletes the whole way through. Is it the most comprehensive testing protocols that gives you the full picture of an athlete's, performance profile? Definitely not. So that's why I've sort of called it like the hybrid testing, because we've got about 80% of it that does cross over to the NFL Combine testing. And then about 20% of it that is just slightly different, but a little bit more quote unquote modern, that actually gives us a more holistic overview of what an athlete's ability is. Because again, if it's a college or a high school or whoever it is that's actually interested in these athletes, you want to provide the full profile. There was a company I used to work with back home that we would send soccer players over to college, was part of it, golfers as well. But for us to actually provide a physical profile on the athletes, so when they rocked up at Stanford or when they rocked up at UCLA, they weren't completely out of their depth. The coaching staff, especially from the performance side, knew what they were getting as an athlete. It's not just a complete raw blank slate. Speaking to some athletes that have been over to the States, they go over there and they are just intimidated because these guys and girls have been training since grade 4 and like they look at weights and they get bigger, they're stronger, they're fitter, they're faster, and straight away if you roll over to college and that's the first thing you see, I don't care what anyone says, you're going to feel like you're on the back foot straight away. So, and then the coaching staff are probably going to feel a bit similar as well. So having that full picture is really, really, really important. So when athletes, given the opportunity, get a chance to go over to the States, they actually are physically prepared. And they're just not as shocked as what I've heard of a lot of them be. So yeah.
And how do we, as Australians, stack up to the Americans in this?
Mate, it's a good question. Like, let's be honest, we just don't have the population versus America. And I think if you listen to anyone that has either been in college or played professional sports in America, it is a different mentality. If you're not broken, it's the next person up, and the next person up is probably just as good, if not better, than the person that's there. And there's just lines and lines and lines of athletes that are ready to take that spot. I think a couple of things too, and I can't remember who I was speaking to about this, but it's one of our podcast episodes. I'm not trying to plug that. I just completely forgot what it was. I thought it might come to me. But the social, economic and climate, we're quite comfortable here in Australia. If let's say we are on the lowest end of the bracket, we get looked after by the government. There is things that we're always comfortable. versus the States. If you're on the quote unquote poor side of that spectrum, you got to do whatever you can to get out of that. And it creates a different mentality. And that happens as young as, like, as I mentioned, grade 4 versus here, you know, you're going to get a little bit better looked after. And it's just different environments that you just can't compare the two together. And I did pull some stats because I did want to sort of touch on this, like high school to college in the States, you got a 9.4% chance of going to college. Now that's just college, which is essentially a 1 in 11. Then you go high school to D1 is a 3%, which is 1 in 33. And then college to the pros, you're at a 1.6% chance. So just statistically speaking, for an athlete from Australia who has, you know, not a whole lot of tactical ability to read the game, it is bloody hard to have a crack at that. And I think this is really important. Like, it's just the reality, right? Like, kids need to know that you don't want to kill someone's dream, but you also want to be realistic and say, like, you know, these kids have been playing this since the moment they could run, walk. So don't go over there naive thinking you're going to kill it. Be realistic a little bit. And I think the other thing too, that outside of just the sporting prowess and the abilities and the goals and things you can achieve on that, the ability to go to the States and get a degree free of charge, especially right now with the HECS debt repayments going up to whatever they've gone up to astronomically, that in itself is a bloody good achievement. One of my good friends just recently came back from college, degree under his belt, free of charge. Got to travel the US, got to play rugby union over there, got to see things that, you know, he'd never be able to see in Australia. And he come back and he's 23, I think, 22. And he's still got a whole, you know, essentially career ahead of him playing somewhat good level of footy back over here as well. So whether you go there and you make the NFL or make whatever professional sport you want to do, or you simply come back to Australia with a whole new life experience under your belt, education, and all these other things as well, I think that's probably a really important thing that a lot of kids don't think about. But long-term is bloody amazing to have that experience and, I guess, the ability to come back, you know, debt-free as such.
We've been lucky enough to speak to a lot of college athletes, and I think the general vibe is that they are pretty grateful of the learning side that they do get as well. But we do have athletes in Australia, so, you know, whether it be rugby league or you know, AFL, basketball, is there any that you can see that transfer well in regards to testing over to the NFL and the flag football?
Look, I know that he's had his indiscretions off the field, but I think what Jared Hayne did was pretty incredible and really opened a lot of people's eyes to the that someone from Australia can go and do that. I know it didn't work out like long term, but in those preseason games, I still go back and watch them when I'm bored sometimes. It was absolutely amazing what he did to be able to go over there. And I think the best thing, I think, even referring back to that, is Hayne was a physical specimen in Australia. I think do you all remember the photo of him with the 49ers when he had his kid off? He looked like a baby.
Yeah.
They were all jacked up, 8 packs, whatever else, and he was and he was one of the, like, arguably the best athlete in Australia at the time. So it is just a different level. It is a different level. But I sort of wrote down a few names here that I just thought of just before. I think my background's rugby league, so I can probably speak to that better than some other sports. But you look at like Jason Saab or Josh Adokar as some receivers, just that pure speed, the ability to change direction, react to a different stimulus from an agility standpoint. I think they would be amazing. Matt Burton, the way he can put up those torpees would just cause nightmares. I'd hate to be under one of those. So I think as a punter, he could be a fantastic option. And then I guess maybe going a bit of left of field, but someone like a Mitchell Stark as a QB or someone that can really hike a ball down the field from that. And then I was thinking, like, your back rollers would be really good, you know, as your cornerbacks or whatever it may be. And I think the best back rower that I could think of, obviously doesn't play anymore now, but Sonny Bill Williams, him over there would be pretty cool. I remember listening to a podcast a while ago, and Willie Mason had a red hot crack over with the Jets, I think. And they wanted to take him, but he didn't do it in the end. So that would have been an interesting one as well. That was Big Willie. He was a front rower. I think they had him as a lineman, I think.
Yeah, he'd be definitely a lineman, either offensive or defensive, I'm not sure. But, yeah, being the size that he is.
So that would have been an interesting experiment. That was back in, I think, the early 2000s. So he would have been one of the very first to do that. So there is plenty of talented athletes in Australia that would make it. It'd just be, seeing how they stack up. I think the biggest thing is understanding the tactical side of the game. You can be fast, you can be fit, you can do all those sorts of things. But if you don't know the rules, you're going to be in for a shocker, number one. But also then like the level, like Jesse speaks to it, the way that some of the players he played with, the amount of film study they would do around their playbook, their opponents that they're facing every single week. It's just a different level of professionalism as well that I don't know whether a lot of Australian athletes have the ability to roll over there, and compete at that level. And that's just the honest truth. I think last
it's
night...
almost not ingrained in our sporting culture, like that level of preparation and all that sort of stuff, hey?
It's a level of obsession as well. I think that's what the best of them call it. I think Mitch Moses last night, I listened to his interview after the game. He had an absolute blinder and obviously got a spot in the Origin team off the back of it. But he was saying that he studied a lot of film around Pangai Jr. in the way that he over chases in some circumstances, hence why he dropped Gutho under and he scored literally word for word what he said. So that level of commitment is almost like that's just what gets you. That's expected. You know, the rest of it, you should be obsessed over the game to the level that it's almost a bad obsession, and that's I guess what they are. But look at the best to do it, and that's what they are. They were just genuinely obsessed with being the best they could be.
And they it seems like over in the States they are obsessed from high school all the way through college, and they're doing that. They're watching film in high school. They're watching film in college. Then if they are making it to the pros, obviously it's non-stop film. But yes, that obsession starts at such a young age.
100%. And a kid that's been looking at film his whole life versus a specimen that rolls over, they've both got their pros and cons, but just the level, and you just can't match the hours of knowledge and understanding that kid has versus the physical specimen. Because, as I said, it doesn't matter how fast, how fit, how powerful you are. If you don't know where you're meant to be, run the right route, block the right position, all that sort of stuff, you're not going to go very far. And I think which would be really good, and I was reading yesterday, obviously the XFL, the Rock took over, XFL.
Yep.
They had a loss again last year, but to be expected based on what they're doing. But, if they prove to be genuine pathways for some Aussie athletes in particular, could be really interesting. Same with the CFL. We had an athlete over here in the off-season, Ante, I can never say his last name, so I'm not going to say it, but he plays in the CFL. So, you've got these other leagues that probably don't have the eyes and the attention that, obviously the NFL does, but that would be a really interesting thing to have that second division competition. In Australia, I think we're very lucky that regardless if you're 30 and you're having a crack and you're running around in C grade, you have the ability to do that versus the States, they just don't. You have the NFL, you have college, and then you don't have much underneath it. And I think that is, I guess, pros because you've only got the best to watch. Negative in the fact that if you want to go over there and you do want to build your way up as such, you don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, looking forward to the 2028 LA Olympics. We've got 5 years. We start putting some plans in place now. What sort of athletes do you think maybe in their, let's say, early 20s might transition across to maybe take on this much touted NFL dream team that's going to be the US dream team that's going to be probably absolutely dominating the floor? What sort of athletes are we looking at that we could probably put up a show against them? And do you have any in mind that may be training with AA already to take them on in flag?
Maybe not training here as such, but again, I think just the athletes that we mentioned, if flag, you're obviously going to take away a lot of you are going to take away majority of the physicality side of it. So essentially looking at athletes that are bloody fast, bloody quick, and can change direction on a dime. I think they're the three you're looking at. So looking at your outside backs in league and union would probably be your big ones. And then, I don't know, what do you guys reckon from a quarterback standpoint? Who would you just hang your hat on as the guy you want to be just ripping it down the field?
I like where you're going down before. We've got a lot of cricketers that have big arms that'll be able to... It's just about seeing the field, I guess, because you have to still be playing flag. You still have to be pretty dynamic, so you can't be that enormous bloke that can't move. So I don't know, maybe a a 31-year-old that just sits at home on his podcast all day might be all right to run around.
I'm gonna go left. I'm gonna go left of field as a QB and maybe just throw in Josh Giddey.
Oh yeah,
Huge, real left of field. He's tall.
He does,
so he can,
put him
he
down.
Can see.
Long,
he can throw. He throws dimes around the court like they're going out of fashion. He's probably not the most athletic, but I think if you look at Tom Brady, he probably almost fits that build. I don't know, just a little bit of left of field there.
He might transition better than a cricketer, because he might see the play unfold in front of him a bit better than maybe what a cricketer might.
Yeah, well, you look at a Stark or something like that. It's very one dimensional. It's straight up and down. Basketball's a more 360-degree game. I guess football, you're looking at maybe a 180 sort of degree game. But if you do get in the open, then it becomes a 360 if you break the pocket. So that, and then the other one I would like to see if he could stay healthy or touch wood, he does get healthy and can come back, would be Pappenhausen. I think Paps would be unreal because he's got a touch football background. So he's obviously quick, agile. I'd love to see Paps maybe as a deep slot or as maybe a running back.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to shoot off. Unfortunately,
these two boys are going to go do live.
Thanks heaps for your time, Jordy.
Mate, love it, lads. Love it. Just go get some fires.
You're going to be stuck with me just to finish off anyway, mate. But
thanks, guys.
We'll thank them
Cheers,
too if
Jordy.
they can go do life. So we've spoken about the male side of things, but we've also got a lot of females that are dominating in the athletic world over here. Are we thinking the same thing for them going over to the Olympics?
Yeah, I think you can probably look maybe more towards your AFL in this circumstance, which I know is a little bit different to what we were sort of saying before with more so, I guess, the rugby codes. The AFL athletes are becoming absolute, genuine athletes and genuine footballers. So I think they have a lot really of them are strong ability
too. Like they've got to go from soccer to they're playing AFL, netball. Like they're really bringing that 360, like you said.
Correct, and yeah, exactly. So you've got some of the AFL players. We recently had Brooke Walker, who played for Parramatta Eels in the NRLW, but she also played for I don't want to get it wrong, but a team in the AFLW.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that crossover there. I think the other one too, we mentioned it before with Danny, but netballers could be a really good one as well with their ability to stop start. Again, see the court or the field in a 360-degree light. So a little bit more, I think, bandwidth in the amount of sports or codes you could pick from. But I guess the underlying theme, right's the same. You just want to see those physical qualities of being bloody quick, bloody agile, and the ability to read the game.
And is this the kind of stuff that the testing that we're going to go through, you're going to be able to see, in the future as well? Like what I'm trying to say, like we'll test them now, but we'll see what they can get to, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think the testing that we'll run through will obviously provide a bit of a baseline. We'll provide some norms also for ages, like we mentioned before, positions, which then we can use over the next couple of years as data sets and data points, which A, we would hope to improve upon, but B, also, uses that historic data to say, okay, well, this is where, athlete A was in 2023. This is where athlete A is now in 2024, 2025, 2026. So, you can see that step-by-step improvement, or you may even see that athlete A has actually gone backwards. Why might that be? Have they put on 10 kilos of muscle? Have they gone through a growth spurt? All these sorts of things that you sort of got to take into consideration. But again, I think it provides a really good starting point for a lot of athletes as a physical profile, and then being able to refer back to that or be able to pass that on to respective organizations, whether that be club teams, representative teams, colleges, but also, again, for them to understand, potentially some of their strengths, and then also, okay, I maybe need to work on my change of direction, my agility, or whatever it may be as well.
Yeah, so you're not necessarily, you might be going backwards in a certain spot, but it might not be because you're getting worse. It might be because, like you said, you've put on a few more kgs and you're a bit stronger in other areas now. But so looking longer term as well, just to finish off. I know you're a busy man, so how do we get that pool where that we want to be able to send younger kids? I know it'd be hard for families, but if they want to do well in this thing, we've got to get them in there early. So how do we expand that pool to be able to, have the kids over there early enough that we can make a genuine, crack at these leagues?
I think a couple of things. I think long-term, what Wade is trying to set up and what will set up, because I know how hard he works, is that I guess that junior program. You look at AFL, rugby league, soccer, netball, they all start at 6, 7, 8 years old. So there's that level of tactical skills and game, I guess, reading and ability that they learn so early on that if that starts to get implemented at that ages, and that periodically starts to get a little bit lower, it might start at 11s or 12s and then slowly work their way down. That's a really big thing to have, because it's just, as we mentioned there before, it's just hours and hours of practice and skill that they get at such an early age. Then I think B, it's just you hear stories of kids that really, really want something, or parents that, want to help their kids get somewhere. It's just, I think it's showing these kids that there is different options out there. Not a lot of sports in Australia especially give you the ability to go and get a free education. And whilst that may not be as we mentioned before, the first thing that they think about, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
the ability to go and travel, live in a different country for an extended period of time. These are all things that don't directly relate to, I guess your training or your ability, but long-term what you get out of it. Because if I knew that when I was in grade, 10, 11 or 12, that rugby was an option to go and play at UCLA, which is one of their main rugby schools at the moment, I would have started playing rugby.
Yeah.
There's no way I would have kept playing rugby league, because I love the American culture. I love the sporting side. I would love to go and live there and experience that firsthand. And then also, like I mentioned, travel around the States and be a part of a, quote unquote professional program, or it can't be called professional program, but a program that, you get well looked after, you get all these resources, provided for you. And then essentially it's up to you with what you do with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think, Wade, speaking to him, he's all about, let's get him in there nice and early and then they can experience it. And like you said, they can come back at 22, 23, like your mate did, and they've experienced everything and they've got a wealth of knowledge that they can bring back. And just the exposure that we're able to bring with things like this combine is just going to help it grow as well.
Massively. And the other thing too is, and I'll speak to rugby league again because that's where most of my knowledge lies, is that after under 20s, if you're not in a New South Wales or a Queensland Cup program, which, at 20, what are you really getting out of that? Unless you're playing anyway, or you're in an NRL system, you're kind of just sitting on the cusp. And you do have the ability to go and travel and play in Europe and things like that, but it'd be unreal to genuine option or union. This is a genuine option for me to go play in America, as I said, get the degree, provide that your grades are right. Also, probably come back more physically prepared than you ever would have been in your life. And at 22, 23, 24, have another crack, or maybe, that's where you just go back to playing at a respectable level. But you look at some of the NRL players now, especially the skilled players. Cody Walker's a fantastic example. I don't think he made his debut till 26. Please don't quote me on that if there is some fans out there that's got that completely wrong. But it was.
Don't worry, they do. They come. We cop it a lot, so be prepared.
Yeah, far later than what your typical NRL debut is. Early 20s and things like that. So just because you are a little bit older, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have a red hot crack. If you do take some time away to come back, it's probably going to look more favourable than disfavourable. I don't know whether disfavourable is a word, but it is now.
We'll make it up.
You know what I mean? So it does just provide an alternative pathway that people may not be aware of, that just needs that first couple of people to go through it, that first big name, as always, to go and do that before it probably becomes a little bit more of a norm or front of mind. And you pair that with the ability to start these kids out at an earlier age, and you're setting yourself up for a pretty, I think, fruitful and long-term organisation that's going to really thrive and succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, I can't thank you enough for giving up your time and coming and showing us a different side of what, one, the combines will be, and two, what people can head down to actually, better themselves going forward. So I have written down here, I look forward to seeing you on the Melbourne League, but make sure you pass that on to Adzi, because it is a shame. We were looking forward to catching up, but I'm sure we'll cross paths at some point in the future. And I do remember you saying just before we got started that you're a basketball man. So before I let you go, are the Nuggets going to get the job done, or the Heat going to be able to come back?
No, I put up a story. Jimmy Butler is obviously a freak and carried the Heat through the conference finals, but Nuggets in 5. I don't know what the score is right now. It's happening right now as we speak.
It is playing as we go, and we don't know the scores, so this will come back. It'll be out just after we finish, and it'll come bite you on the ass. Probably.
Pretty confident Nuggets in 5. Be great for them as a franchise to win their first chip, obviously. Joker doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's an absolute freak. But also Jimmy Butler carried the Heat through the finals, and what he put up was insane. In saying that, and basketball fans, please don't come at me as well, I thought it was pretty boring finals versus the conference finals. I'm a big Lakers man, have been my whole life. So as soon as the Lakers went out, I was pretty much mentally and emotionally tapped out after that point. But yeah.
Last minute rumors, Chris Paul coming to the Lakers. Thoughts?
It got blocked, in 2016 or whatever it was, 2014, when Kobe tried to bring him across. So I would take him because he's a genuine. He helps. He would take the ball out of LeBron's hands, which is a massive thing. If we can keep D'Angelo Russell, maybe potentially lose Dennis Schroeder for Chris Paul, I'd take him. But keep D'Lo. He was my man. So when he came back to the Lakers, I was stoked. So let's keep D'Lo.
Yeah, all right. I'm sure there's plenty of bigwigs that'll hear this over there, mate. So I'm sure it'll get across. But I appreciate your time, and we will catch up with you at some point in the future.
No, I love it. Thanks, guys, and appreciate everything you guys are doing as well, especially for, I guess, football in Australia. When I say football, Gridiron, obviously. And you guys got good energy, so appreciate it.
Cheers, mate. We'll see you soon.
Legend.